While visiting Liberty Lake on Sunday, July 7th, just 3 days after Americans celebrate what we now refer to as the 4th. It used to be called Independence Day. It's supposed to remind us of what happened in 1776, when a group of civilians decided to be free of the evils and tyranny of servitude to their masters and government. The Declaration of Independence cites all men as being equal and endowed with certain inalienable rights by their creator. There's lots of other really important concepts in the document, but I'm going to focus on the inalienable rights. This is one of the few times in history where free people are establishing that their rights come from nature or being alive, not from a small group of people claiming to rule over others, who claim to grant free people their rights as long as they play along with the system their masters and government have created. For all of you statists out there, don't worry. It didn't take long for a new group of political elite here in America to create a new document enslaving the people of this country to new masters. Of course, at first, because of the freshness of the revolution, these advances on liberty were small to appease the people. But over time, and many false flags and scaremongering tactics, we now have a full-fledged oligarchy who grants us our rights. Don't agree? Try traveling down a public road you paid for with your own property without asking our masters for permission to use your property. Or better yet, try to enjoy some of your property like a boat or a floating vessel of any type on your public waters by parking your car or truck in an already existing public parking lot in the state of Washington without asking the state for permission to park in the public parking lot you already paid for. This video is going to show you exactly how that's going to work out for you in the land of the free and the home of the brave. Oh wait. That's right. In reality, any rights given to us by those calling themselves a government can also be taken away. I guess that makes this the land of the fee and the home of the slave.
Demanding accountability and defending your rights against the police specifically, and the government generally, are difficult and dangerous tasks. Your right to watch the government and record what you see is a natural right that is protected by the Constitution, and it cannot be taken away by the government.
Welcome to the great outdoors of America, where you're free to explore our public lands and enjoy the abundant natural resources in this vast and great land. As long as you've asked permission from your masters, of course. I mean, that is what I was taught in the American education system. If I ask permission of my masters and pay the right fees, I have freedom. Okay, what's really happening here is a Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife law enforcement agent, Jolyn Beauchesne, is out here on the Sunday after we celebrated Independence Day, making sure everyone enjoying their supposed rights have asked permission and paid the proper extortion fees in order to use public facilities like this. Keep in mind, this public use facility allowing public access to a public body of water is already bought and paid for with money previously stolen from people in Washington state. However, even though our federal government has made it clear in Section 3 and Subsection 1 of the Federal Lands Recreation Enhancement Act, there are to be no fees charged for simply parking or for general access to our national forests, BLM, and Bureau of Reclamation lands, the state of Washington deems it necessary to collect extra fees in addition to what they've already stolen from its citizens. The thing is, in Washington state, and I'm sure other states, the ruling class has used up the money stolen from civilians and set aside for providing access and protection of our natural resources for the enjoyment and use of the people. Clearly, the state did at some point use that money to create parking and access areas like this. However, like all governments and government entities, scare tactics are used to scare people into giving up more control and regulation of our lives and resources, all under the guise of protection and security. Programs like the Aquatic Invasive Species checkpoints are now gobbling up all the money used to maintain these access sites and develop new ones. If you want to know more about these checkpoint programs specifically, which are pretty much all over the nation, check out my 3-part series on them. Links to those videos and all of my sources are listed below. We have grown government and its departments to run and rule over so much of our lives, The money stolen in the form of taxes doesn't cover it anymore. In order to make up some of that money, new rules and fines are instituted to generate that missing revenue. This means the ruling class has to keep hiring more enforcement agents like this one to enforce all the new rules on the not-so-free people of this country. What the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife has done is ask the state to create Discover Passes for those wishing to use public lands in the state of Washington. They require passes if you park at almost any public access site. In most cases, there are signs requiring these access passes whether the public land or resource is federal or state-owned. This is where the confusion comes in. According to the Federal Lands Recreation Enhancement Act, fees can't be charged for simply parking or accessing most federal lands. There are very few exceptions laid out for why civilians can be charged for parking or accessing federal lands in the National Forest, BLM, or Bureau of Reclamation. Yet the state of Washington is trying to convince its people they have to pay to access both federal and state lands within the borders of Washington. The signs informing people where Discover Passes are required are very vague about the penalty and law itself. Personally, I think this is because they use the same signs whether the site is federal or state-owned. The wording is vague so that unknowing sheeple parking on federal lands where parking and access fees are not permitted will either pay for a yearly or day-use version of the Discover Pass. Or, like you see happening in this video, if a civilian doesn't have a pass, they will likely get a ticket. The signs don't cite an actual law that backs up and establishes the use of the Discover Passes, letting users know what law they might actually be breaking. Instead, the signs do state a vehicle access pass or Discover Pass is required and you may be ticketed. But the statute listed is not a statute, it's a chapter, RCW 7.84. This chapter establishes natural resource infractions, but it's not the actual statute relating to the Discover Pass. The website giving information on how to get and use a Discover Pass only states you need them on state lands. However, like I mentioned, I've seen them in the past in parking areas for BLM lands and National Forest lands in the state of Washington, where it's prohibited to charge fees. It's time to wake up, people. Extortion agents like Jolyn Beauchene aren't going to be fair. They're going to follow orders, which is to write tickets to violators of statutes, whether there is a victim or not, in order to raise more revenue for the Corporation of Washington State and grow its control over allegedly free people. After all, order follower Beauchene here took over $86,000 of stolen money from people living in Washington in 2018. She's paid better with stolen money than she would be with money volunteered by constituents for her to do her job. So of course she's going to do what her masters say, not what's morally or ethically right. In her defense, I'm sure she's very programmed that what she's doing is morally and ethically good. I'll stop talking for now and let you guys watch how this order follower demonstrates how her and other enforcement agents are true sovereigns, enforcing laws on others but not enforcing them or following the same laws themselves because they have been deemed above the law by our masters. As usual, all of my sources are listed in the description. As you watch this video, hit the like button, share it with everyone you know, subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment on this subject. I love reading your thoughtful comments and insight.
And then decided they wanted to come out.
Do you guys not like that? Yeah, they're on our board. Fantastic. And you have a horn or a whistle too? Yeah, two whistles. You guys are squared away. Have fun out there.
Yeah, thank you. I can't help it. I just have to stop this, and I'm so glad I recorded this. I have to point out how absurd this is. Our masters have convinced us we can't even take care of ourselves. Instead of being free to choose if we want a life vest on our vessels with us or not, we have let our masters create a law requiring us to have one life preserver per adult on the vessel, and any kids under 16 must be wearing a life preserver while on the vessel. If you don't have the required life preservers, more than likely you'll be issued an extortion fee for not following the rules. This extortion fee is backed by the threat of force if you don't pay it. If you don't believe me, then why is order follower Beauchene wearing the title law enforcement and carrying a gun? In addition to that, just see what happens if you don't pay the fee by the date you're ordered to. My guess is you'll have a warrant giving one of these enforcement thugs the idea you belong in a cage until you square up with our masters. All that just because you want to be out on a body of water on anything from a paddleboard to a big boat without a life preserver. I'm not even to the most absurd part of this whole thing yet. Get this, if you're in some sort of a vessel other than a blow-up raft or a floaty, you're required by law to have a life preserver. However, it's perfectly legal for me to be on a little floaty in the middle of the lake with no preserver. Or worse yet, I can even get into the water right here at this boat launch with no flotation devices or life preservers at all. Just my own body, and swim anywhere in this lake I want without being ticketed or having money stolen from me for not following rules written on paper by our masters in government. Now, does that sound like they're looking out for our safety or trying to take more money from us in the form of fines for victimless crimes? If you think order follower Beauchene actually cared about these people's safety, you're mistaken. I'm guessing, even with my camera rolling, she would have given them a ticket if they had no life vests and decided to put their boards in the water and get on top of them. This statute is about revenue generation, not safety, as if somehow it makes us more safe if money is stolen from us. Come on, people, wake up. This is not freedom. Hey, while you guys are out marking violations and stuff to statutes written by our masters, I just wanted to point out you can write yourselves one because your front license plate is blocked by an aftermarket grill. So that's illegal in the state of Washington. You can't have your license plate viewed. You're welcome. So you should go ahead and write yourself a ticket while you're writing other ones for parking passes we don't need and public lots we already paid for.
Have a good day.
Hey, can I get your name for the record? Excuse me, can I get your name for the record?
Jolene Beauchene.
Thank you. So again, they're writing violations to people out here. Yet they've got a violation right there. Their front license plate is blocked and obscured. Any of the rest of us had that happen here in the state of Washington, we'd get ticketed for it more than likely. But since they're the enforcers of the rules our masters write for us, they can get away with it because no one's going to write them a ticket. On a normal day at this access site, people are minding their own business and enjoying what they think is freedom. However, on this day, all that was interrupted when people saw this brown enforcement vehicle coming into the lot. They dropped what they were doing, whether it was fishing or they were out on the water, and made sure they rushed over to show this order follower and extortion agent that they had indeed asked her masters for permission and paid homage to those granting these privileges to these public lands and resources. It's funny how things change. This is the kind of stuff that led to the Declaration of Independence in 1776. People then revolted against unjust taxes and statutes, claiming their natural rights as their own. These days, we have given up those inalienable natural rights for the safety and security of the state. We serve our masters rather than them serving us as we are told they do. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit the like button and share it with everyone you know. Find us on Twitter as well as censorship-free platforms like BitChute and Steemit or DTube. Of course, subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to smile at someone you don't know every day.